Hello, this is Thomas, K4SWL, and I'm about to do a Parks on the Air activation, but before I do that, I thought I'd talk about the Elecraft KH1 and how it compares with the Mountain Topper series radios by L&R Precision. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is it's probably the second most requested comparison I've had from my readers and subscribers since the Elecraft KH1 came out a few weeks ago. Well, I guess it's been over a month ago now. And so I thought we'd talk about it today. Now, this is not going to be a receiver performance test or anything like that. I'm not sure if I'm even going to turn these on, really. I just really want to talk about the radios in a way that may help you make a purchase decision if you're considering buying one of these radios. So this is the Elecraft KH1, made by Elecraft in California. These two radios, this is the L&R Precision Mountain Topper MTR-3B and the MTR-5B. The actual current model that they sell at L&R Precision is the MTR-4B. So I don't have the 4B here. I have the 3B and the 5B, which are both models they used to make, and they discontinued those. So I'll try to remember to talk about how the MTR-4B differs from the KH1. However, I'd say that most people that buy the Mountain Topper series radios these days, they are buying used radios most of the time because they're just not produced in very large numbers by L&R. I just looked, and they usually release them in batches of maybe 25 or something like that. And you just have to be at the right place at the right time to grab them. So this radio I bought new in 2020. This radio I bought used about 3 months ago, and the Elecraft KH1. I'm actually in the testing group for this radio, and I have used it at multiple summit and park activations already. I'm about to do a park activation out here with it, and yeah, so I've got a little experience with these radios and kind of thought I'd talk about how they all compare. Now, to get started here, one thing that you'll notice and a lot of people will talk about is, well, you know, the KH1 is much more than just a, radio. It's designed to be, it's not just a tabletop radio or something. It is actually designed to be a handheld, portable, or pedestrian mobile radio. So when fully configured, when you have the little cover on it, and I've taken the cover off and I'll explain why. When you've got the cover with the logging tray, and you've got the whip antenna and the paddles, and the internal ATU, the coils that go along with the antenna, and when you have the battery pack and the real-time clock / internal charger, when you have all those things, this is an $1,100 radio. Well, like I just said, the Mountain Topper MTR-4B is a $370 radio, so there's a really big price difference there right up front. But to do this comparison today, I actually want to talk about the radio in a way that I think people don't think about comparing them, and I think they kind of forget that you can get the KH1 this way. But basically, if you remove all of the things about the KH1, which makes it a pedestrian mobile radio, like you take off the paddles, and I can't do this, I'm not going to do this right now, but if I remove the battery from the inside, if I remove the ATU, and of course I'm not going to do that, then you have the base KH1. The base KH1 costs $550. So, yes, it's more than $370, but it's not a whole lot more. And I feel like you get a lot of radio for $550. Now, I know that when these radios are exported outside the U.S., because these are all manufactured in the United States. These are Mountain Toppers are manufactured in North Carolina, and the KH1 and all Elecraft radios are manufactured in California. So I know when you export these, the price is going to go up a little bit on them. But basically, if you order the KH1 transceiver only, you get a 5-band CW transceiver with basically almost all the functionality of the Edgewood package, with a few exceptions, with no real-time clock, no ATU or coils for the whip antenna, and no battery pack, no paddle, no logging tray. None of those extra things. But you still have a 5-band CW radio with all the functionality of the KH1 in the Edgewood package otherwise. So that's actually quite a lot of stuff. And I don't know how many people are actually ordering them this way, but when I first saw the KH1 and I saw that was an option just to buy the transceiver itself, I thought, you know what? it's very similar to my Mountain Topper MTR5B in a lot of respects, and we'll talk about that right now. So first of all, I'll talk a little bit about both of these radios and the manufacturers behind them. Elecraft has now produced this radio, I think they announced it sort of around October 20th, 2023. We're at the end of November 2023 right now at the time of making this video. I'll be posting this pretty soon. Keep in mind, some things could change between now and a year or two from now if you're watching this video then. But basically, Elecraft manufactured this radio to be sort of to hit the niche market of summits on the air operators and people who want to do anytime, anywhere radio in a pedestrian mobile style, or at least a very lightweight, compact sort of radio style. And I think they really did succeed. This is a really cool, very interesting radio. It's designed to be handheld, and so the controls are at the bottom here, so you can reach them very easily while you're holding it in your hand. It has quite a lot of functionality. It is a 5-band radio, so it covers 40, 30, 20, 17, and 15 meters. It is CW only right now. There could be some extra functionality added to it in the future, but basically it's a CW only radio that can also receive single sideband, and it does have general coverage receives, which means that you can hear outside of the hand bands. You can receive outside of the hand bands, I think, from about 6.7 megahertz up to something like 22 megahertz or something. But basically, it covers quite a bit of the shortwave broadcast band. So you can do shortwave broadcast band listening by widening the filter in sort of the SSB reception sort of configuration. And then you zero beat the broadcaster and you can listen to it, which is kind of cool. It has variable crystal filter in it. It is a super het receiver design. And it has 6 CW message memories, 3 per bank. There's 2 banks. It has an AF gain control, a VFO control. It has a switch up here to change between using the whip antenna and using the BNC antenna, whatever antenna you may want to have. And there's a little ground lug here on the very top as well. And that's basically the KH1. Now I've written and done a lot more videos about the KH1 recently, so let's talk a little bit about the Mountain Topper series radios. And actually I recently did a getting to know you video, I believe, about the Mountain Topper MTR3B. You probably want to check that out if you want a more detailed view of what I think about these radios. But I love them. I love the Mountain Topper series radios. These were all designed by Steve Weber, who now works with L&R Precision to manufacture them. Early on in the early 2000s, I'm not sure when, Steve started making these designs. I think they were called the ATS back then, for maybe it's an Appalachian Trail or something. I can't remember. Someone can correct me in the comments. But these were available in a small kit form that you could fit inside of an Altoids tin. So the Altoids tin, which is a very small tin, would be the container for or the chassis for the radio, which is just a really cool thing. And I've always thought that was the pinnacle of all things QRP, would be to build a kit in an Altoids tin. And it was designed for people who would go backpacking, wanted something super, super, super lightweight, and could take along and play radio in a very simple format. And I think they really succeeded. Most of the Summits on the Air operators I know that are pretty avid activators have a Mountain Topper radio in one shape or form. So like one of the models of Mountain Topper radios. I have, like I said, the MTR3B, the MTR5B, and I have reviewed the MTR4B. And you can probably find the review. If I remember to do it, I probably will forget. I'll link to it above. But I've got a full review of the MTR4B on QRPer.com as well. So the way these are configured, they are pretty much the same radio, but each iteration, each time they came out with a new band on these radios, so if they went from the 3B to the 5B, they usually add like a small amount of features when they do that. And I'm not even so sure. I think the MTR3B was produced after the 5B, and I think there was a 3B version before the 5B. I'm not really sure of that timeline. But basically, they're all fairly similar in design. So they have, this one has, for example, the MTR3B has 3 bands, and that's 40, 30, and 20 meters. And this is the size of a pack of playing cards. It is the smallest radio that I own. It's smaller than the KH1. If you look at the profiles of these radios, it's smaller in 2 dimensions, in depth, and it's smaller in length. Now, it's actually the same in width. These are exactly the same size in width. So, I mean, to the to the millimeter almost, they're the same size in width. So. Now, there's more to the KH1, right? It's a little deeper radio because there's more to it. There's room in here for a battery pack and some other things. But the Mountain Topper radio is really, really tiny. The MTR-3B is super tiny. The MTR-5B, which is a 5-band radio, it has 40, 30, 20, 17, and 15 meters. It has exactly the same bands that the KH1 has. They have the exact same 5 bands. And they all work, all the Mountain Topper series radios work by these series of switches, which change the band and change the filtering when you move them. It's a really simple design that Steve did, and it's been actually, it seems weird at first. When you first see these, you're like, well, why do you have to have 3 buttons that you're trying to keep in line with each other? And you want to keep them vertically in line with each other when you move from band to band. The reason he did it was because it was just a great way to save on the cost of the radio. It's a much more simple design, and it works. It just works really well. It's a very clever design. And the MTR-5B is a little different in that the 40 and 30 meters are on these switches, and then the 20, 17, and 50 meters are on these switches. But these radios are super compact, and there's basically nothing else to them. So they do have built-in message memories. They're bare bones otherwise. They are designed to have only what you need for a summon activation or a park activation or something, and not a whole lot more. Not a whole lot of frills with these radios. I have referred to, for example, a lot of our QRP radios like the ICOM IC705, the Yaesu FT818, the Elecraft KX2, all those radios. If I were to make an analogy and compare these with car models, I'd say that a lot of those cars are like our Toyotas, our Hondas, our Fords, all of those cars that we see on the roads every single day. They get you from point A to point B really effectively and really get the job done. But I would say that the Mountain Topper series radios is more akin to like a Formula One car in that they strip out everything except for the stuff that you need to get the job done. And that's how these Mountain Topper series radios are designed. They are CW only. There is no volume control at all. There's no speaker. There's no internal battery. There's no key that you can attach to it or anything like that. There's no internal ATU. A lot of the early models like these two have no power output readings and no SWR readings on them as either. So they really are super bare bones. I mean, there's really no volume control on it. So when you put headphones in, you need to have a headphone, unless you're just comfortable with the default volume setting. You can change that inside here. You can sort of change the volume overall, but you can't do it on the front panel or anything like that. You have to open up the radio to do it. If you're comfortable with the audio level, then you may not need this, but most of us get headphones that have an inline analog volume adjustment and use that. Also, I use a recorder to record a lot of my videos. Since I'm making videos, I'll record the audio into a digital audio recorder and then use the digital audio recorder's volume control in order to control the volume out of these radios. You can change the side tone level a little bit, and I think even the frequency on some of the newer radios. But for both of these, you have to really pull apart the radio, get inside, and change that with a little screwdriver on like a little trimmer thing. The MTR-4B is the same way. However, they've made a hole in the back of the radio so that you can use a nylon screwdriver and do it without having to open up the chassis. So they made it like a little bit more convenient. And on the Mountain Topper MTR-4B, which is again the latest iteration of the radio, it also has an SWR meter and a power output meter. You can make it do that if you need to in straight key mode, I believe. It's been a while since I've reviewed that radio, so not all that's super fresh in my mind. The MTR-4B is roughly the same size as this 5B. I think it's about the exact same size, maybe slightly bigger, but I think it's about the same size. And the interesting thing about the 4B is it covers the MTR3B band, so 40, 30, and 20, but it also has the addition of 80 meters. So it actually has that much lower band that you don't find in a lot of these small QRP radios. Now, I would argue that the reason I didn't buy the MTR4B myself is because I just don't use 80 meters a whole lot in the field, and since I love the MTR3B and it's just so much smaller, I would rather just stick with the 3B, even though the 4B does have a few advantages over the the 3B in terms of features and stuff, because it's a much newer radio. Now, if we're talking about these radios and trying to make a comparison, it's kind of a, when you have the bare bones KH1, I do think it's actually kind of a close comparison to the MTR5B especially. But something I have to be really upfront with, when you're looking at mountain topper radios especially, when you're looking at any radio these days between these two companies, you're going to be looking at a lead time to get your radio. The KH1 right now at time of posting I think is out maybe a couple of months or something. The mountain topper radios, again, not the 3B or 5B, but the MTR4B, I'm not exactly sure when they're doing their next batch of radios, but L&R will release like 25 or maybe 70 radios at a time, and they usually get snapped up almost immediately. And it's not a pre-order, you just have to be there at the right place at the right time to place your order and get one. So getting a mountain topper can be challenging. In fact, all of these, well, this one I bought new in 2020, but I actually have a second MTR3B. That's how much I love this radio. And this 5B, I bought both of those used. And the used prices these days are roughly the same as the new price. There's very little difference because the demand is so high and the supply is so low with those. So just keep that in mind, that if you're looking at most of the mountain topper radios, you're probably going to be looking at used, unless you're just lucky enough to be there at L&R's website when they release new radios. And I would say that if you are interested in a mountain topper, you really want to subscribe or whatever you can do to make sure that you're seeing when new ones are being announced. So let's just talk really quickly, as because I'm really taking up a lot of time here. If you're trying to make a decision between these, keep in mind this. So first of all, the KH1 has something that is just, I find really, really useful, even though it's, a very basic one. It has an internal speaker. And neither of these radios have an internal speaker, and neither does the 4B. I doubt any of the Mountain Topper series radios will ever have speakers in them. It actually has, the KH1 has a little tiny speaker. It's not the best speaker in the world, but you can get through an activation with it. And I've been through at least 2 activations with really, really, really heavy pileups, and I got through it. The little speaker was overloading and stuff, but I got through it. So I'm really pleased with it, actually. I love the fact that it has a speaker option. The other big thing that the KH1 has over the Mountain Topper series radios is it has an AF gain and a VFO knob. So it's kind of nice. Both of these radios, the Mountain Toppers, you can only use these up and down arrows to tune. It does have a direct frequency entry mode that you can go into, and I'll show you. Well, actually, I won't show you that right now. I'll just show you what one of these looks like when I turn it on. I'm just going to plug in a little battery. You can see the LCD display on the MTR3B is a 2-line LCD backlit display, which is really very similar to the one on the KH1. In fact, it may even be the exact same display. But when you're tuning, you push up the up arrow to go up, you push the down arrow to go down, and on the 3B, if you push the up arrow and you want to go a little faster, you can press both at the same time and it'll take you a little faster. Now the 4B, I can't remember, I think it's the same on the 5B. I think the 4B, the button combination is slightly different, but it'll also go a little faster up and down when you're doing that, and that's a really cool thing. But with the KH1, you can actually change down, you can do very, very fine tuning. You can press the encoder or the VFO once and it'll do it in tenths of a kilohertz. You can press and hold it and it'll go to 1 kilohertz. So you can actually just zoom across the band if you want to. This is a much easier radio to tune in general than the Mountain Topper series radios. But, most of the time, and I get L&R and Steve Weber's philosophy behind the Mountain Topper series radios, most of the time you're doing a SOTA activation. You're not tuning around a whole bunch unless you're hunting summit to summit parks, or summit to summits, or park to parks if you're in a park. Usually you're only doing that. You're not doing a lot of hunting and pouncing, so you're not moving around a whole bunch. These aren't the best radios for doing, like if you had it at home on your desk and you're hunting parks and summits all day long, you're going to be hitting these buttons a lot. There's a direct frequency entry function with this where you use your key to basically key part of the frequency, and it'll skip straight to that frequency, and that's really cool. But it's just a little unhandy to use, but you get used to it, and it'll definitely help take you to the frequency a little faster. I'm not so sure I'd be using it in the field very often. I primarily use that in the shack when I'm using it. So anyway, that is one benefit of the KH1 over the Mountain Topper series radios. The other thing is the message memories. Both of these Mountain Toppers and the MTR-4B have 3 CW message memories, which is really all you need for the field. I tend to only use 2 most of the time, but does have 3, which is kind of cool. The KH1 actually has 3 per bank. So you can actually do, you can hit the message memory, and you can actually do 2 different banks if you want to. I'm not going to do it right now because I don't have this hooked up to an antenna. I don't want to accidentally key. But both of these I think are pretty easy to record. I would argue that the Mountain Topper series radios, when you're recording your message memory, is probably one of the easiest in the world of ham radio, because it'll do it 1 letter at a time or 1 character at a time. So you can, if you make a mistake, you can just back up 1 letter. You don't have to re-record the whole thing. So it's actually super easy to program the CW message memories in these, and I like that. The KH1 also has a variable filter width for when you're using the radio. As you can see here, you got 3 different filter positions. You also have attenuation. The Mountain Topper series radios have none of that. They have a fixed filter width, and you can't change attenuation or anything like that on the radio. They're kind of just designed to work that way. Also, as I mentioned, the KH1 has general coverage, so you can listen to things outside the ham bands. These have, I think you can go outside the ham bands with the receive on these, but the filter is stuck at, those CW narrow width, at a CW narrow width, and so it's not great for listening to broadcasts and stuff. You really can't understand them when you're using it. So also, the KH1 will allow you to do cross mode. You can listen to single sideband and send CW if you want to. You can hear single sideband on this just fine. The other thing that actually I really, really love about the KH1 and all Elecraft radios is the firmware is updated fairly frequently, and it's very easy to do the firmware updates with the free utility that comes with the radio. To my knowledge, I don't think that you can upgrade these as a user. I don't think you can upgrade the firmware in these radios. I may be wrong about that, correct me, but I don't think you can upgrade the firmware in either of these radios. So that is a really big thing also about the KH1. So when you feel new features come along, little tweaks and adjustments are made, you can take advantage of that, which is kind of cool. The other thing that you just have to keep in mind about the KH1, now again, I'm really talking about, we're pretending that this doesn't have the battery pack in it. We're pretending that it doesn't have the ATU in it when it's just a base unit. But basically, if you have a base unit that you buy for $550, you can add extra stuff to it. There's room in there to do that. You really can't do that with the Mountain Topper series radios. There are no other options to order. Now, there have been people who have modified their radios. They've added, I know K6ARK Adam has done quite a lot with these radios because he really likes them, and he's put in like a little SWR meter. He even has these little like nuts on the side that you can touch with your hand that's capacitive touch so that you can key off the side of the radio. There's some really cool mods like that, but it's not... those are more on the homebrew side and less even on the kit side. There really are no modules or anything like that you can buy with these radios to upgrade them. But with the KH1, you can always upgrade some of the stuff in it if you decide to do that later on. Now, another thing people don't talk about a whole lot, but I kind of think about all the time, being a guy who owns a lot of radios, all of these radios, the Elecraft and the Mountain Topper, they hold their value really, really well. So if you use one of these radios, if you buy one and you use it and you think, this just isn't for me, you can sell them pretty easily. In fact, in the past, I've even bought used Elecraft radios and found out 5 years later when I sold it that I sold it for more than I bought it for because the market price had changed a bit. So all of these radios are not ones that are just going to plummet in value. In fact, I have seen people buy new mountain topper radios and turn around and try to sell them for a little bit more than they're worth retail-wise. I don't think that's a good idea, and I don't support that. But I do see that you can get really good value out of your radios when you're selling them later on. I was pretty lucky when I bought this MTR 5B. I think I bought it for, it was $275, which I consider to be a really good price for this particular radio because they're hard to find. If you see these MTR 3Bs, you're probably going to be paying about $350 for them, something like that. And again, the new MTR 4B, brand new from L&R Precision, is $370. And so another thing, when you're buying these from the manufacturers, the KH1, if you buy the $550 just basic radio, it'll come with your USB cable for doing all of the upgrades, the firmware upgrades and stuff, and more, and remote control and some other things you can do with it. It comes with the manual, like a full printed manual. It comes with a power cord with pigtails on it. And I think that's it. The manual and both of the cords, the USB and the power cord. The mountain toppers just come with a power cord. They have a few extra options you can order, but basically when you order the basic one, it comes with the power cord with it. So now there are some advantages of the mountain topper over the KH1. I think it has a couple of little advantages. The biggest one to me is the current consumption on these radios is just sort of benchmark. The KH1 has superb current numbers. It basically in receive will consume about 50 to 70 milliamps, which is pretty outstanding. I don't know of another general coverage radio on the market that comes close to this. I really don't. That is incredibly good numbers. But the MTR 3B, I think, is like 18 to 15 milliamps. So it's just nothing, which means that you can run it on like one of these little 9-volt rechargeable batteries for a really long time because it's just so incredibly careful with the current consumption on this. Now I will say that the Mountain Topper series radios, there are no power output settings that you can change in this. Power output is strictly based on voltage. The KH1 does have a high and a low power setting, but again, the power also depends on the voltage you're putting in it. And this will put out a total of 5 to maybe 7 watts if you're using one of the higher voltage numbers. The MTR 3B, if you feed it with 9 volts, you get about 3 watts out. If you feed it with 12 volts, not 13.8, but actually 12 volts, you'll get 5 watts out. A thing about these Mountain Topper radios, it's less of an issue with the MTR 4B, I believe, but if you push more than 12 watts or 12 volts with this and you have a mismatch on your antenna, you could possibly fry your finals. They're actually fairly robust, and they're not very expensive to replace, but you just want to keep that in mind. L&R will tell you not to feed it with more than 12 volts, or if you do go a little over 12 volts, it's fine, but make sure there's a really good match on your antenna. But when I use the Mountain Topper MTR 3B, I use 9 volts with it. In fact, I've been doing the same thing with the 5B. I just don't find a need to have to even go to a full 5 watts, frankly. I'm happy with running 3 watts with those radios. So in general, like I said, the Mountain Topper price is a little less than the base unit of the Elecraft KH1. And the radio, the MTR 3B is slightly smaller than the KH1. Not a lot smaller, but slightly smaller. The MTR 5B probably for full, if you look at all the dimensions, is probably the same size. It's probably a little bigger than the KH1. It's not as deep as the KH1. You probably can't see this on the video very well, but it's wider than the KH1 by quite a bit. So this is going to be a much bigger radio than the KH1 in overall mass. And I think that the MTR4B would be in the same boat. I think it's going to be probably in terms of mass, it's going to be a little bit bigger. These are all very lightweight radios. The KH1 I know weighs 6 ounces when you remove the ATU and the batteries and all those other options. It's just a base radio. I'm not exactly sure how much these MTRs are. I'd have to look up the weight of them, but they weigh really just nothing. I think that this MTR3B is probably slightly less than 6 ounces. I have to go back and check, but you can make a super lightweight radio kit with it. So if you're trying to make a purchase decision, I'll try to keep this really short. If you're a Summits on the Air activator or somebody who likes to go really lightweight when you hit the field, any of these are going to be great options for radios. Any of the Mountain Topper series and this KH1, they're all going to be great options for CW only radios that are ultra lightweight and kind of more bare bones in a sense. If you're looking at the base unit of the Elecraft KH1, then they're all going to be a little bit on the bare bones side. I think they're all good options. I think that if I were making a purchase decision, I would really be tempted by the KH1 right now. And the reason why is because it actually has 5 bands. It does have an AF gain and a VFO. It's designed to fit in your hand. And later you have the option of adding extra features if you want to, and that's awfully tempting to have that in a radio, even just the base unit. That's very tempting. And the other really big thing for me is it has an internal speaker. When I'm using the Mountain Toppers and I'm filming a video, I either have to hook up an external amplified speaker to this, or like I said, I'll use my digital audio recorder in order to record it. And now I have to admit, I'm a headphones guy when I'm not recording videos and I'm out doing a park activation. I almost always use earphones. So that's just kind of the way I like to do portable radio. I think everybody should probably use earphones so you can hear the signals a little bit better. But I do like to have this internal speaker, even though it's fairly limited on the KH1. Is it worth the extra that you would be paying the, what is it, like $130? $130? No, it's more than that. It's 200, I guess it'd be about 200 and... How much did I say the MTR4B costs now? The MTR4B is $370, and the KH1's $550, so it'd be about $280 more. Am I doing my math correctly? No, I'm not doing my math correctly. $180 more. Oh gosh, I really need another cup of coffee. I think it's worth those things. I think it's worth it for the price to get those extra additions. That said, I'm a massive fan of Mountain Toppers, and I'll never sell any of these. Like, I love them. I'll be using them in the field, and I'm never going to sell them. So, you know, it's a tough decision. But I do think that they, you know, if you're a lightweight portable operator, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of these. I would be tempted to go with the Elecraft also, just because the company it's a little bigger than L&R Precision, and you know, they make more of these than they make of the Mountain Topper series radios. So there's going to be more of these floating around, so a little bit bigger community to support it as well. If something goes wrong, and Elecraft has great customer service. I've also been very pleased with L&R Precision's customer service. But again, it's just hard to get them new. They're in such small batches, and there's so much demand for them. Now, the demand may have lightened off a little bit with the introduction of the KH1. I'm pretty sure that a few people that were looking at the MTR4B probably have switched over to the KH1 now. So yeah, I think in terms of taking them to a mountaintop and playing radio, any of these will work really well. If you're the sort of person who may want to go to a full pedestrian mobile setup, then you need to consider getting the KH1, you know, with the logging tray, with the attachable paddles. Of course, these have no way to attach paddles directly to them. You can, and I have, actually I'd say that, but you could almost plug these in. There wouldn't be room for the plugs here on the other side. I've used N6ARA's tiny paddles on these before. So you can do that, but it's not designed for it. Probably not good for that jack to be moved around a whole lot, because I don't think it's secured in the same way that they secured the jack inside this KH1, knowing that the KH1 would have a key directly hooked into it. So yeah, So I think it's kind of up to you. If you want a slightly more full-featured radio for the extra money, go for the KH1. If you really like the Mountain Topper series radios and just how they work, and you don't see yourself ever doing pedestrian mobile in the future, then try to find a Mountain Topper radio. See if someone's got one out there. I think right now is probably a good time to look because of the introduction of the KH1. Probably more people will be selling off their Mountain Topper radios. So you can put out a want-to-buy ad even on the classifieds, and maybe someone will be willing to let go of one of theirs in order to get the KH1. Don't ask me, though, because it's not going to happen. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this makes some sense. My videos are real-time, real life, and so as such, they're not edited, they're not personality driven, and they're probably kind of boring to most people who want to look at them on YouTube. But basically, I just thought I'd share a little bit before I start my activation here in a second, and I hope it's been helpful. I've probably missed some points. If I have, feel free to comment kindly in the comment section below, and I'll try to cover that and answer any questions you may have in there, or some other people in the community can answer the question for you. But the most important thing is to take the radio you have, get out there in the field, and go play radio, which is exactly what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to start my POTA activation here and enjoy this fine afternoon. So everyone, take care. Thank you so much to my Patreon and Coffee Fund supporters. You guys rock. You're amazing, and you make all this possible. So thank you. And take care. Take care of one another out there. And until next time, 7 twos.